Well, there is no way to begin today's daily cancellation except to dive right into it. Here's the Yahoo News report. It says comedian Jordan Gray stripped naked on Channel 4 as part of the revived special episode of Friday Night Live. The 80s comedy series returned for a one-off episode on Friday, 21st of October, as part of the channel's 40th anniversary celebrations. Ben Elton was back at the helm, whoever that is, along with former Friday Night Live cast members Enfield, Brand, and Julian Clary. The comic, who is trans, performed a rendition of the song Better Than You from her critically acclaimed Edinburgh Fringe show, Is It a Bird? At the end of the song, Gray, who competed on The Voice in 2016, shouted out, "The best thing about live TV is I can do stupid stuff like this." After improvising on the keyboard, she then ran across the stage and stripped completely naked to applause and cheers from the audience before returning to the keyboard and playing it with her penis. With her penis. I mean, that whole sentence. She played the piano with her penis. Imagine someone like from 15 years ago arriving here in a time machine, and the first sentence they read is that. Now, there's a video that goes along with this story, but I will spare you such horrors. You need not suffer as I have suffered. In fact, I became aware of this story as I was scrolling down my Twitter feed on Saturday, and the video popped up and started playing, assaulting my eyeballs and my soul without my consent. This is, by the way, one of the many reasons you should keep your kids off of social media if you aren't already, and perhaps keep yourself off of it also. Social media subjects us to lots of imagery that we do not want to see and certainly did not have in mind when we opened the app and started scrolling. Just a constant stream of ugliness and filth and insanity and many other kinds of awful, depressing things. Thanks to the internet, we have all seen things that no human being should ever have to see. Traumas that the human mind was not made to withstand, burdens it was not intended to carry. And this story provides a good example of that sort of thing. And in fact, forget about social media. This degenerate predator did this on live television with children in physical attendance in the auditorium and also watching on TV. He exposed himself to kids and to plenty of other people who did not consent to it. He is a predatory creep who should be in prison, but instead he is, of course, being celebrated by the left. The Independent, the outlet The Independent, went so far as to call the indecent exposure episode bold, hilarious, and get this, life-changing. It was life-changing to see this guy playing the piano with his penis. Many other leftists on social media echoed this sentiment, extolling the grotesque, repulsive sight with the sorts of glowing adjectives usually reserved for something like the Sistine Chapel, vastly overcompensating in their efforts to pretend that they weren't as grossed out as the rest of us were, which I can guarantee you most of them, in fact, were. I think this all reveals two things. Well, there was something else that was revealed too, but we aren't going to discuss that in any detail. As for the other two, first of all, if it wasn't already clear to you, it should now hopefully be apparent that the days of leave us alone and stay out of our private lives are over. And they've been over for a long, long time. In fact, those days never really existed. They never started. Left-wing LGBT activists pretended they wanted us out of their bedrooms, but we were never in their bedrooms. And we never requested access to their bedrooms. Every time they said, get out of our bedrooms, we always said, well, no, don't worry. I'm not coming in there. Don't have to worry about that. What they really wanted and have now succeeded in doing is to turn the whole world into their bedroom, to act out their sexual fantasies in full view of the public. More than that, and this is all the more the case for trans activists specifically, they want us to participate in their sexual fantasies. This is the demand of the trans activist. He wants you to not only to expose you to his fantasies and fetishes, but he demands that you play a role, whether you like it or not. So here we have a trans person with an exhibitionist fetish, and everyone watching Channel 4 on Friday night, and many other millions more who happen to be scrolling through social media the following day, are forced to be actively involved just by being witnesses, by being spectators. Sexual perversion and rampant, out-of-control narcissism. That is trans activism in a nutshell, if you'll pardon the expression. Second point, I've always said that male privilege, at least in modern Western societies, is a myth. But I should update or amend that claim because male privilege is a myth for most men. However, men who identify as women enjoy the most privilege of all. In other words, the only men who have male privilege are the men who identify as female. Now, a woman who stripped her clothes entirely off on live television would be harshly criticized for it, and rightly so. And that's true even in our current age, when women who make sexual objects of themselves are celebrated and glorified. But there are still limits, however arbitrary those limits might be. A woman who did something similar would have her, she'd have her defenders, certainly, no doubt, but she would have a great many critics too. And that's even more the case for so-called, quote unquote, cisgender men, otherwise known as just men. If this was some dude who identified as a dude and fully exposed himself on television, he would be seen straightforwardly as a predator, a Harvey Weinstein type. He would be, after all, exposing himself to an audience without that audience's consent. Now, considering what counts as sexual harassment these days, a guy pulling his penis out on stage and whipping it around would, without question, be found guilty of it. You could be accused of crossing the sexual harassment line if you pay a woman a compliment in a way that she finds creepy or awkward or whatever. So exposing your genitals to thousands of women all at once without their consent would obviously obliterate that line, wherever the line is drawn. So if this was a man who identifies as a man, he would have then no defenders anywhere. Nobody would be defending him. But the man who is still a man and identifies as a woman, for him, suddenly this act of sexual harassment becomes bold, beautiful, life-changing. So male privilege, yeah, definitely, that exists, with a caveat. The male with privilege is the male who denies that he is one. And the privilege he is given is not one that any decent human being would want, because he has the privilege of being a narcissistic, predatory, self-obsessed degenerate. And we are all meant to applaud the very behavior that we rightly scorn when exhibited by literally anybody else. Now, many people have gone along with these rules for far too long, and that's how we've gotten to the point where a guy who calls himself a woman would feel entitled to take his penis out on live television. If this is not a message to the tolerant masses that they've been far too tolerant and need to start being a lot more intolerant, then I don't know if they'll ever get the message, if they don't get it now. I can only hope that this is enough. And I can say to this guy, who should be on a sex offender registry right now, and would be if he didn't have the trans your way out of jail free card, I can say to him, you are canceled. And that'll do it for us today as we move over to the members block of the show. Hope to see you there. If not, talk to you tomorrow. Godspeed.